There comes a time in every business where you get to a point and you realize that you're not making the money that you think you should be earning. And so the natural thing to do at that point is to increase your prices. However, a lot of people go about this the wrong way, and I see it's rife in the cleaning Facebook groups. People will just increase the price and not change the service deliverable. They won't change the experience for the customer. It literally just is a price increase and nothing else. And that's a really surefire way to lose a lot of customers at once. So if you want to do a price increase, there is a better way to do it. There is a way in which you can actually increase your earnings per hour while still delivering an even better experience for the customer than before. And in doing so, you retain those customers a lot better because in their eyes, it's actually a higher value that you're providing for them. And they're not just thinking about it in the sense that, oh, I'm getting the same thing, I'm just paying more for it. So let's talk about that today in this episode of Self-Made. And let's talk about how to move from hourly rates to packages, because that's generally the first big shift in anyone's cleaning business, is going from charging an hourly rate to charging a cost per result. And hourly rates are fine. It's a good way to get your foot in the game, and to learn how long things are going to take you, and to get a good gauge for what sort of service you want to offer and all that other stuff. So it's a really easy and simple way to get your foot in the game. Anyway, why do we want to move away from hourly rates to packages? Let's talk about that. Well, first of all, you're always capped at whatever hourly rate you set. So per hour, if you say your time is worth $40, doesn't matter how hard or how fast you ever work, you're always going to make $40 an hour. And you're punishing yourself for being efficient at your job at a certain point. Because if you've been doing this long enough, you're going to be a lot quicker than someone who's new in the game. And you're doing yourself a disservice by charging an hourly rate, because there is a ceiling attached to it. You can't go beyond that. Even if you're really good at what you do, even if you're providing 50% more value than the next person because you're quicker, and despite being quicker, you're still providing a very high quality of service, you're doing yourself a disservice by doing that. So the thing with hourly rates is, as well, customers always want more. Every time, if you go to someone's house and they expect you there for 3 hours, they're going to try to squeeze as much out of you as possible. They'll get you to do as much as they think is humanly possible in that 3 hours. And I found that for me was one of the biggest things that changed when I went from hourly rates to packages early on in my business, is that clients just stop expecting the world from you. Because from day one, you're not setting firm expectations with an hourly rate. You're not telling them exactly what's going to be done, exactly what result is going to be achieved every time. And so there's a very big disparity there with customer satisfaction, because it's really hard to make someone happy when they feel like there's always more that can be done. And so with that being said, you always get scrutinized when you're working per hour and you're just selling your time to someone. So that's why we want to move to package deals, because package deals give you a much higher capacity to earn per hour. For example, you could be doing a house clean for 3 hours that you know is only going to really take you 2. And so you're just stretching that time out to 3 hours and dilly-dallying around and finding a whole bunch of other stuff you can do to fill in the time. And it's like really, really dumb tasks that the customer probably won't even notice. You know that you don't really need to be there that time. And so if you just switch from selling your time to selling a result, you can probably charge the same amount of money and just get out of there in 2 hours instead of 3, thus making your actual hourly rate a lot higher. Because that's, at the end of the day, we're still charging per hour. It's just framed differently for the customer. It's just a different perception. They're looking at it through a different lens, because they're not thinking, oh, I'm paying this person for their time. And the customer's always going to think their time is worth more than yours. So you can't really charge much for that. And you're just reframing that perspective to, I'm paying for this result. This is exactly how much I'm paying, and this is the exact result I'm going to get. So it leaves no room for error, and therefore no room for complaints, because they know exactly what they're getting every time. And it makes scaling super easy as well, because it's easier to train your staff to just do 1 or 2 different packages, 2 different services. And instead of just getting staff and then sending them to a house for 2 or 3 hours and giving them a whole laundry list full of things to do and expecting them to all act the same way and carry out the same service. It's just hard. We tried that very early on. And then when we started to grow the team, it just got so messy. And I'm glad that we made the shift early on because it made scaling really easy. And it just makes you seem more professional as well at the end of the day, because it changes the customer's mindset from, like I said, paying you for your time, which they already don't value much, to paying you for their desired or their dream result. Now, a lot of people early on, like myself did when I was first starting out, will probably be charging a very low hourly rate that I call a dead end rate, really. Charging $30 an hour. And at that point, when you do a price increase, if you leave it too long, you find that you have to do a big jump. And it's hard to do a price increase at that point, but not impossible. We went from, I think, 35 an hour to about 55. That was a big jump. And we only lost about 5 to 10% of our customer base while increasing profitability by, I don't even know, 30 or 40%, something like that. So a price increase like that, where you're going from something really low to jacking it up a massive amount, it requires a certain aspect of transparency and honesty. Because at the end of the day, it's hard to really justify that beyond just adding a few extras into the service and saying like, oh, I realize I'm not making a lot of money at the moment. You need to be transparent and honest in every possible way. Talk about why the increase is really necessary, educate the customer on what all the expenses are in your business, what the new expenses that have come up are that you didn't have when you first started the business, and why that's now catching up to you in a bad way. Talk about rising costs in the world, talk about CPIs, insurances, travel, etc. And the really important thing to do that I cannot stress enough is when you're doing a big price increase, whether it be big in the sense that you're doing something from $30 an hour to 50 or 60, like a big cost per hour increase, something like that, or big in the sense that you're rolling this out to a lot of customers at once, you should always do what I call a staggered rollout. So, if you think about it, if you do a massive increase all at once, you could potentially lose a lot of customers at once due to that big increase and people just turning their nose up to that. So the best thing to do is roll the price increase out over a couple of weeks or even months, which is what we did at a certain point. I think this is about 2 years ago when we did our price increase. I was conscious of that fact that like, oh, what if everyone just said no, like at once? I would have no business. And so I think we had about 60 customers at this time. And what I did was I emailed about 6 to 10 at a time over a period of, 5 or 6 weeks. And yeah, sure, there were no's. The first week I would have gotten a no. Second week I probably got 1 or 2 no's. But I was able to keep replacing them every week with new customers instead of doing it all at once, getting 20 no's and then being really, really out of my depth trying to replace like 20 different customers at once. That's not a position you want to be in. It's really hard for anyone to fill all those spots and try to catch up to that and recuperate, especially when you're at that point where you don't really have a lot of infrastructure and you're not financially sound. So a staggered rollout is so important. A lot of people will be doing a price increase when they're solo because you get to that point where you're booked out and you want to hire staff, but then you do the math and you're like, I don't think I can actually afford that. So at that point, you probably have 20 or 30 customers. It's still really important to do a staggered rollout because you don't want to lose a lot of income at once. That's a scary thing to happen. So staggered rollout, very important. And another thing that I like to do, which I also did when I did my price increase, is what I call the yes or yes close. Sounds funny, right? Yes or yes. You're not really giving them many other options, are you? Not yes or no, it's yes or yes. So what I mean by that is you offer the customer a very similar service at the same or slightly increased cost while cutting your time down to meet your desired hourly rate. That's why it becomes yes or yes, because in the customer's mind, it's like get the same service at a slightly increased cost or get a very similar service at an even more increased cost. So you can cut your time down by, 15, 30 minutes every service, which makes a big difference in your hourly rate at the end of the day. And then in the customer's mind, it's not a big increase and they're actually getting more out of it because you've changed the service slightly. So think about what you're doing now in your service. You may be doing a basic clean. You may be doing a kind of middle range clean where you do just about everything, but not quite. Or you may be doing a lot of everything. So it really is going to be up to you because everyone runs their business differently. But if you can find a way to, for the people on a basic clean, offer them, kind of a mid-range or deluxe clean at a higher rate, but it's at a point where they feel like they're getting so much more out of it. It's like, oh, we're going to get the skirting boards now. They're going to dust the door frames. They're going to dust all the wall hangings. They'll make the beds every time. And it's only going to be, $35 extra every service. In their mind, they're getting a lot more value out of it. So they're happy to pay the $35 extra rather than you saying it's going to be an extra $35 every service for this exact same thing. And they're going to be like, well, that's not really fair. Why? So back when we did our price increase, we offered a pretty mid-range clean. We didn't do a very deep clean. And then I quickly realized, if we just add things like skirting boards and door frames, if you're doing a weekly and fortnightly service, it's not going to take a lot of extra time to do all this. Maybe, 10 minutes every service just to run a feather duster over all the surfaces and collect all the dust. But you can charge an extra $30, $40, even $50 depending on the house. And so that's a massive increase to your hourly rate behind the scenes. An extra 15 minutes for $40. That does crazy things to your bottom line. Small increases like that, whereas, where on the back end, it's massive to you. It's a massive difference in your hourly rate. But to the customer, it's like, we're getting 15 to 20 different extras every service for just $40. So that's the sort of shift that you have to make when doing a price increase. It's not just, oh shit, oh no, I've gotten to the point in my business where I want to grow, but I realize I'm not charging enough. Therefore, you've got to pay me an extra $100 every time I come to your house just because I've made this realization. That's not good business. That's not good practice. You need to be smart about it. Staggered rollouts, yes or yes close. Think about how you can change your service deliverable to increase the value for the customer, increase the perceived value so that the customer in their mind thinks they're getting a lot out of it and they're happy to pay that extra difference, so that you can increase your profitability while still kind of maintaining that rapport and not just because people are going to resent that if they just feel like they're paying a lot of extra money for the same service. So that's why I do what I do. That's why I did that in my price increase. And that's why an increase is so important, because if you want to grow your business, the numbers need to be right. And a lot of people don't get the numbers right at first. I know I didn't. Most people, I'd say 95% of people will have the numbers wrong from the very first day. So it's really important to do this, but it's also a really crucial moment in your business where a lot can happen. You can lose a lot of business at once. And so you need to be smart about it. It's a lot to think about, but the main takeaways I just want to reiterate. Moving away from an hourly rate to a package deal makes it a lot easier for you to restructure that pricing proposition to the customer rather than just saying, oh, I feel like my time's worth more now. You got to pay me $50 when it was originally $30 an hour. So move from an hourly rate to a package deal and stagger the rollout. Like I said, don't do it all at once. Do it over a period of weeks or even months. And think about ways you can increase the perceived value for the customer by adding things to the service while cutting your time down and therefore increasing your profitability per hour. So it's a reciprocal value on both ends. You're getting more for your time and the customer feels like they're getting more for their money, even though technically they may not be. So those are the three main things. And, the yes or yes close. Give them an offer where the only thing they can choose is something that benefits you. So it's like, would you rather have this same service that you've got now for a slightly higher price you may tweak the service a little bit? Or would you like a way more deluxe clean for a higher price that seems really reasonable? That's a yes or yes close, because either way, they're agreeing to an upsell. And so those are the 3 or 4 main takeaways that you should have before doing a price increase. It's, like I said, a very crucial time in your business, and it's going to set the foundation for many years to come and a lot of growth. And so you want to get it right, and you want to make sure you keep that rapport with your customers, because it's a hard time to go through in business. You feel bad about it. You feel like your customers will hate you. So that's some ways that you can do it smart and not lose a whole bunch of business at once and still make more money and make people happy. So if you're at that point in your business and you found this helpful, I hope you can take some of this and do a price increase and, benefit yourself and benefit your business, because it really is important. So we got to get it right. Anyway, thanks for listening to another episode. Be on the lookout, because I'm coming out with a private community soon on the School platform. If you're not familiar with School, it's spelled SKOOL.com. It's almost like a private Facebook group. It's just without all the distractions of Facebook. So I'm going to be hosting a private community in there. It'll be full of courses and weekly calls and content that you can use to help yourself and grow your business. So that's going to be really cool. That'll be launching in the next few weeks. If you're listening to this in the future, I'll probably add a thing at the end of this podcast to tell you how to go and join it. And yeah, I'll hopefully see you in there, and there'll be a lot of cool, exciting content for you to go through that's going to aid you in your business journey. So thanks for listening to another episode of Self-Made. I'll see you in the next one.